Today's video is going to be on poetry and Muhammad's relationship with some of the poets that surrounded him locally, which wasn't a really friendly relationship. It was quite disturbing, and it got quite gruesome. Now, to start this off, we should talk about the enemies of Muhammad. Muhammad considered a vast majority of people enemies. Some of these people were dangerous, but some of them were just poets who openly spoke out against Muhammad and his beliefs. And the way that he would deal with them was oftentimes quite gruesome. Now, he himself advocated for the deaths of these individuals. He got his companions to do his dirty work, and it was quite convenient. He had a group of people who took him as an apostle of God. They would kill for him, go to war for him. Pretty much their lives were at his disposal at any given moment, and he knew that. So with that brief introduction, let's get into Muhammad's Dead Poet Society. The first poet of Muhammad's Dead Poet Society we are going to be talking about is Abu Afak, who was a man who was 120 years old, who was a poet. He showed disaffection when the apostle killed Al-Harith bi Sa'id, and said in his poem, "Long have I lived, but never have I seen an assembly or a collection of people more faithful to their undertaking and their allies. When called upon the sons of Kayla, when they assembled, men who overthrew mountains and never submitted, a rider who came to them split them in two, saying, permitted, forbidden, of all sorts of things. Had you believed in glory or kingship, you would have followed Tuba." The apostle of God, Muhammad, said, "Who will deal with this rascal for me?" Whereupon Salim bi Umair, brother of Bi Amr bi Auf, one of the weepers, should have called him the Great Reaper, went forth and killed him.
The story is related as follows in Uyun al-Tarfi Funun al-Maghazi wa Ash-Shamay al-Wa'asir.
Then occurred the mission of Aslam ibn Umair al-Miri against Abu Afak, the Jew. Abu Afak was from Banu Amr ibn Auf. He was an old man, 120 years old. He was Jewish, and he used to instigate the people against the Messenger of Allah and compose poetry about him. Salim ibn Umair, who was one of the great weepers, they should have called him Great Reapers, and who practiced in the Battle of Badr, said, "I vow that I shall either kill Abu Afak or die trying to kill him." Now, it's quite embarrassing that one of these great people, right, one of the great companions that fought in these battles, was in doubt that he could pull off this act of killing a 120-year-old. Anyways, he waited for an opportunity until a hot night came, and Abu Afak slept in the yard. Salim ibn Umair learned of this, so he went to him, placed the sword on his liver, and pressed it until it reached his bed. The enemy of Allah screamed, and some of his followers rushed to him, took him inside the house, and interred him. Allah knows best, and he died, right? So there you go, folks, right? Muhammad got one of his companions to do his dirty work. Muhammad didn't like the poetry, and at that, Abu Afak was added to Muhammad's Dead Poet Society. Now, this companion goes on to kill a woman who was of the same tribe as Abu Afak. And by the way, I just want to make mention that Abu Afak and her tribe was not allies with Muhammad and had no peace treaty with the Muslims. So Muhammad should not be messing with these people whatsoever. Anyways, she showed disaffection when Abu Afak had been killed and decided to compose poetry of her own about Muhammad, right? And it says very clearly, this is also in the Life of Muhammad in page 676, says that she said, "You obey a stranger who is not of yours, one not of Murad or Madhiji. Do you expect good from him after killing of your chiefs? Like a hungry man waiting for a cook's broth, is there no man of pride who would attack him by surprise and cut off the hopes of those who expect aught from him?" Sam bi Thabit answered her, saying, "Banu Wa'il and Bi Waqif and Katma are inferior to Bi al-Khazraj." When she called for folly, woe to her in her weeping. For death is coming. She stirred up a man of glorious origin, noble in his going out and coming in. Before midnight, he dyed her in her blood, and incurred no guilt thereby. When the apostle, right, Muhammad, heard what she had said, he said, "Who heard me of Marwan's daughter?" Umair, one of the bloodthirsty companions, was with him and heard him, and that very night went to her house and killed her. In the morning, he came to the apostle and told him what he had done, and he said, "You have helped God and his apostle, Umair." Now the companion went out and just murdered her after he heard the statement, "Who will rid me of Marwan's daughter?" Right? This woman, right, an extreme sense of emotion over the death of one of her tribesmen, an elderly man at that, who was 120 years old, who was just murdered by the dogs and followers of Muhammad. she decides to compose her own poetry. Umar heard Muhammad say the statement, "Who will rid me of Marwan's daughter?" went out as a bloodthirsty dog and murdered this woman just because of poetry, my friends. And by the way, that poetry was composed because an elderly man from her tribe was brutally murdered by the companion of the Prophet.
The following events can be found in the life of Prophet Waqid's Kitab al-Maghazi.
In page 86, right, it says very clearly that Umar, the killer, Adi, when looking for her in the middle of the night and entered her home, her children were sleeping around her. One suckled at her breast. He touched her with his hand, and discovering the suckling babe, pushed it from her, took her child from her, and he placed his sword upon her heart and pierced it until it came out from behind her, like the sick bastard he is. Then he returned to pray the dawn prayer with the Prophet to Medina. When the Prophet turned, saw Umar, he said, "Did you kill the daughter of Marwan?" He replied, "Yes, for you are dearer to me than my father, O Messenger of God." Remember how I said that these people were at Muhammad's disposal and he would use them for his dirty work often. This is a clear example. In Muhammad, a prophet for all humanity, by Wahid ibn Khan, makes a brief mention on page 332 about a man named Harith ibn Talatil, who was a poet, and it says, he used to pour scorn on the Prophet through the medium of his poetry. The Muslims were permitted to slay him, and Ali did so. In Quran 8:31, it tells us, "And when are recited to them our verses, they say, Verily, we have heard. If we wish, surely we could say like this, Not is this but tales from the former of people." Basically saying these are not stories from Allah, but rather old tales. Now, in the tafsirs of Ibn Kathir, we are told that this ayah was revealed about him. It says that it was said that An-Nadr bin al-Harith, may Allah curse him, was the one who said this. An-Nadr visited Persia and learned the story of some Persian kings. He went back to Mecca. He found that the Prophet was sent from Allah and reciting the Quran to the people. Whenever the Prophet would leave an audience in which Al-Nadr al-Harith was sitting, An-Nadr began narrating to them the stories that he learned in Persia, proclaiming afterwards, "Who by Allah has better tales to narrate, I or Muhammad?" When Allah allowed the Muslims to capture An-Nadr and Badr, the Messenger of Allah commanded that his head be cut off, and that was done. All thanks are due to Allah. Now, even Allah had a bone to pick with these poets, not just Muhammad. Allah really didn't like these poets. He would even reveal how they were making fun of him, right? And Muhammad would get his son-in-law, who married his daughter, Fatima, to cut off the head of this poet. I want to become one of the members of Muhammad's Dead Poet Society, right? So the best way to do that is to write a lovely poem about Muhammad. Luckily, I am very creative and I've done this. So ladies and gentlemen, I give you the great poem of Abdul Masih, the poet. Once in a cave under the sky, there was a pig with big dreams, full of pride. A prophet's title he wished to bide. He'd preach to the dumb, the stupid, and the weak. His lessons were lame, though strange and oblique. But the world, alas, did not see his worth. A pig with such dreams, what a curse from birth. He spoke of visions full of despair, of faith that would make you puke, and a future so unfair. A power that corrupts as stories unfold, and his path turned dark, his heart drew cold. With sword in hand, you would have thought he'd meet his doom, fighting a battle sealed in gloom. The heavens wept, the earth did sigh. A pig's ambition had reached the sky. Then in a twist so odd and wild, he married a girl, young and mild. Her innocence lost in his grand scheme, her life turned into a twisted dream. A story of ambition, of dreams gone awry. A pig who reached for the stars, but died, choking on his aorta. His legacy now, a caution to all, that not all who dream shall rise or stand tall.